I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly. I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram is a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a philosopher in Greeley, Colorado, and with me is TJ Wilson, businessman, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
My man.
Hey.
There are some times where the culmination of all the things you've been geeking out about for the last, say, 2 or 3 years kind of come together in one spot, and it just all mixes into this fantastic meal to enjoy.
Right.
And that's where we're going today.
Okay, great.
So, dear listener, if you just stumbled across this, you are in for a treat. My favorite set of episodes that we did were very early on, which you and I have talked about, or at least I've said that a handful of times, and it's the stance, coping style, and affect groups. If you haven't gotten a chance to listen to these, you should, after you binge through the Villain series, which is a masterpiece. But I loved those podcasts because it wasn't just talking about these 3 elements of the Enneagram: stance, which is how you get what you want; affect, which is how you connect to the world; and coping style, which is how you solve problems. What we did in that series is we paired each of the stances together, and we talked about relationships.
Right.
And that's what we're going to do this time. We're going to go back to that stance and relationship material, but this time we're going to overlay it with the stuff we did last week on time. It again is the case. This has been just so helpful, mind-blowing, and useful, all in the same, it's in a little box there, just ready to be open.
Right. Well, it's been fun to discover how this one issue, time orientation, sort of infects and informs. It sort of weaves its way into all other aspects of talking about Enneagram.
It is nuts to me when you open that box, and it just does every single time. The more that I just meditate on it, it obviously takes a lot of time to put those ideas down on paper or even record them, but it's there.
Right.
There's so much there, and maybe we'll plow through some of that here this time for sure, and maybe next time.
Right.
Big idea for us tonight is we're talking about stance. If you're new to the Enneagram, stance is about getting what we want. So 3s, 7s, and 8s are aggressive about getting what they want. 1s, 2s, and 6s are reactive about getting what they want. And 4, 5s, and 9s withdraw to get what they want. Big idea for us here is that our stance is a tool, the tool for getting what we want. And it is exclusively focused on one realm of time. That is aggressive types. They use this tool almost exclusively in the future.
Right.
And reactive types are using it almost exclusively in the present, and withdrawn types are using a tool that's utilizing the past. And when we understand that about our stance, we can name how we're connecting to the world, how we're getting what we want, and it affects so much in our relationships. There's so much to say here, but let me create space for you. What do you think?
Well, I think that we'll talk about this more as we get into it, but I think that as you start to notice that your orientation to time points you in a direction, then you notice that the people around you might be pointed in a different direction. And all of a sudden it makes sense why you're why some of the struggles that you have is because you're literally facing in different directions.
Correct.
And the reason that you get along with certain people so well is because you're facing in the same direction. It's almost like trying to describe something that somebody else isn't looking at.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Or sometimes there's a complementariness here.
Right.
I'm unable to access the past. I need people in my life who bring those flavors out.
Right. Right. And this is something that a lot of us don't ever think about. It's not new material in Enneagram world, but it's not really commonly talked about yet, and we think that it plays a role in most aspects of how the Enneagram works. And like just starting to learn about it illuminates so much, and we're really excited about. I'm excited to just talk about it, let alone what can be learned from it. So,
boom. Well, let's get into this. Again, this is Around the Circle. We pick a topic, we go around the circle. And today we're talking about how our stance affects our relationships. So when we're in relationships with others, they get what they want by either focusing backward, forward, or in the present right now. And when we're in relationships, we get what we want by either focusing backward, forward, or just now. And being able to name that focus means the world to how we communicate about our priorities, how we engage the things that are most important to us. Man, this is a game changer. It's been a game changer for me in my family and in our business, in TJ and I's business. This comes up all the time now. Not only as this is why we're in disagreement, but as something that really allows us to say, okay, in this moment, we really need to push into so-and-so's skill set because they're the one who is future focused.
Right.
But regarding this question, we should push into so-and-so's skill set because they have a past orientation. In utilizing our superpowers, that's again, so helpful.
Right. Maturity is about holding the past, the present, and the future all in balance with each other, and learning to recognize what part you focus on and what part the people around you focus on is just a step toward maturity.
Yeah. We need each other to shore up each other's deficiencies.
Right.
They aren't weaknesses necessarily, but they certainly are blind spots.
Right.
We've used this metaphor a handful of times in the past. I don't remember just using it recently, but imagine that Enneagram is like a set of notes and everybody gets to play just one note. If you only got to play one note, you couldn't make very interesting music. But when you get a bunch of notes together, you can create songs. And this is one of those places where we really see that.
Right.
When you can communicate well, draw on each other's skill sets, natural foci, it can really make things better. So there are 6 combinations here. It would be 2 withdrawn types, a withdrawn and a reactive, a withdrawn and an aggressive, 2 reactives, a reactive and an aggressive, and 2 aggressives. We're going to just go through those 6 and just talk about the dynamics at play between those combinations. This will be immensely helpful if you know what your person's type is, or what your boss's type is, or what your kid's type is. You certainly don't have to, but if you do, certainly listen for those combinations, or even combinations between 2 people in your life who you care about who perhaps are fighting or just constantly, not on the same page. And perhaps this will bring some clarity to it.
Right. Just a reminder that if you don't know that person's type, you don't get to type them. The number one rule about typing other people is don't. It's dangerous. It's you could be wrong, and you're now putting them into a box that they don't necessarily belong in. But the caveat for us is that stance is one of the things that you can a little more easily recognize, and that is what we're talking about today. So if you don't know the other person's type, you can guess. Just make sure you hold it really loosely. Like it's really, really important for people to discover their own type and for us to not put a type onto them. So you can guess and you can sort of operate from that guess. Just make sure at all times that you hold that guess loosely.
Bang. Well, I want to start with the withdrawn types, and we'll just start with 2 withdrawn types. So
Great.
There's a 4 and a 5 or a 9 in relationship.
Right.
So there's only a couple combinations here, a 4 and a 5 and a 9, or a 4 and a 9.
Right. Anyone in the withdrawn stance.
Both of them will be past focused. These are the tools that they're going to use. They're going to use past tools to get what they want. Right. So real quick, we've obviously just did a long podcast on this, but like, what's the quick explanation here so that we can jump in?
So the focus on the past is about looking to where we have been, what we've known, the experiences, both from our personal lives for those in the withdrawn types and the history of the world. Everything leading up to this moment, what has worked, what has gotten us the things that we want, how have things gone in the past. That's how past-oriented types focus on solving today's problems, is what has worked in the past.
Would it be appropriate to say the tools of the 5 are the tools that make them feel safe, and the tool for the 9 is something from the past that really makes them feel calm or comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
Tool for the 4 is what makes them feel special, unique, give them a good sense of their inner life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are principal tools. Those aren't secondary tools, right?
Right.
I mean,
right.
that ends up being a large measure of how 4, 5s, and 9s get what they want in the world, is utilizing tools that give them what they want: security, attention, and control.
Right. Yeah, and always looking to the past to achieve that goal. It's a focus on the past as a way to get those things that they're actually looking for.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in a relationship, you're going to have 2 withdrawn types. These are 2 action repressed types. Both of them will be backward looking in order to get what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that look like in a relationship?
Well, I think it looks like a relationship that doesn't necessarily have a lot of... all the obvious stuff, not a lot of forward movement, not a lot of planning on where we're going, but is really comfortable and sort of content with reminiscence as a focus. So 4s, 5s, and 9s being in a relationship are going to talk about things that have happened to them really comfortably, and they're not necessarily going to be focused on things that are going to happen. It's like that relationship is gonna hinge on, like, I'm thinking about the relationships I have with other 4s, 5s, and 9s, and we're constantly talking about, oh, did you see this? Do you remember when that thing happened? I have this story from high school that I want to tell you about now. And those types of people are going to be drawing from their past experiences and from things that have happened in the world, and that's what they bring into those relationships. So it is going to be a lot of reminiscence, and it's going to be really hard for those types of relationships to push forward because their natural focus is on what's behind them.
When we did our first dive into this pairing, we called these the space seekers.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about 4, 5s, and 9s where they're looking to find the spaces where there isn't going to be a whole lot of activity. Yeah.
Right. Where they can be comfortable, where they can reminisce, where they can sort of turn inward a little bit. Not necessarily looking to set or accomplish big goals because we're comfortable where we're at.
Yep.
Because it's familiar to us.
And both of them have that past focus. One of the pairings that we talked about was from Shawshank Redemption of Red and Andy. They are in a space that they just don't leave for, for a few decades.
Right.
The whole arc of the movie is, will they actually ever, go out of this one space? Mm-hmm. Lots of backward focus there, though.
Yeah.
Andy the banker, very aware of investments, power of investments to get what he wants, understands how, I think it's even... The language in that movie was something like geology is the study of time and pressure. Right. And then Red is the guy who can get things for you.
Right.
That is, he knows here are it's not systems, but it's, how does that work for
he knows
9s?
what levers to pull to get what he needs.
Yeah, there it is. And both of them have fashioned out their rhythms, their niche.
Mm-hmm. And carved out sort of a comfortable space for themselves.
The tools for creating that space. for both of them are different, but they're both past oriented.
Right. Well, and notice, like, I think they're also going to be a really good example of how withdrawn types will struggle with the future, because notice that the future that they discuss is not one that's rooted in the real world for them. So they don't talk about what I'm going to do when I get out of here. They talk about what I could do if I could do anything.
Yeah.
You know? And Red struggling with not having any kind of vision of getting past the parole board. And like Andy is spoiler alert, Andy is in the midst of carving his escape route and never tells Red about it. They discuss Owatanejo, but it's in this sort of fantastical, hypothetical kind of setting.
It's even as here is a resource for you to remember later.
Yeah.
Once you are able to get out, remember this thing, because that's where I'm going to be.
Yeah. And isn't Owatanejo, isn't it a return for Andy? Like, did he go there on his honeymoon or something?
No, the tree is, though. The tree where he proposed to his wife is something
Right.
that's out of his memory.
Okay.
And that's, again, he's given Red tools from memory.
Right.
When you get out, I need you to go to this place.
This place from my past that has significance.
There it is. He's using these tools from his past. And even when this is the very end of the movie, and I know this from memory, I didn't even prep any of the Shawshank stuff. For Andy, he says, I want to go to a place that has no memory. That's what they say about the Pacific Ocean, is that it has no memory. And it's like, I want to move into a new space that perhaps is more future. But, it's not just here's all the bad things that have happened in the past.
Right.
For Red, his last time in front of the parole board, the guy asks him if he feels remorse. Well, remorse is a past, you're taken in the past, and how does it make you feel today? And he says, there's not a day goes by that I don't feel regret at what I did back then. All these tools, being utilized, to get what they want.
Right.
Where are the places that this pairing's going to struggle?
Well, I think we've touched on it already. It's this pair is going to have a really hard time getting things done together. Like, this pair already struggles with getting things done on their own, and having another person that they can reminisce with is going to stifle that even more. Typically, it's really hard for this pair to get the ball rolling. Once it gets rolling, they might do okay, but they're gonna really struggle to start moving in a direction, especially if it's just this pair, without having an outside force sort of pointing toward a future for them. They're really gonna struggle with envisioning an actual future and making goals to get there. That's the biggest one, I think.
That's perfect. Brings us to then the next pairing would be reactive types and withdrawn types. Again, reactive types, their stance is in the present, and withdrawn types, their stance is in the past. Reactive types, 1s, 2s, and 6s, when they are paired with 4s, 5s, and 9s, there's again going to be different focuses now. Different time orientations in terms of the tools they're using. So, you want to talk about this pairing?
Well, one big thing to note here is that the reactive types are going to be they're going to be sort of reacting, if you will, to the energy of the other half. So, with withdrawn types being sort of focused in the past and action repressed, reactive types are going to either join that energy and sort of like their focus is going to sort of drift, or they're going to start pulling. They're going to need to become the driving force. So they're going to start pulling the withdrawn type forward in a way. Now, reactive types are they're present focused, what's happening right now, what needs to be done, who am I around? Like this is their focus is on what's happening right now, and they're not so much looking to the future, but that past focus from the withdrawn types can sort of help anchor them oftentimes. Like this is so reactive types are their thinking repressed, so they have a hard time remembering and letting productive thinking infuse their planning and their decision making. So the past focus of the withdrawn type can actually really help boost that. For sixes in particular, just remembering the things that they've done well can be really beneficial to sixes. And because they don't have an anchor in that past focus, being paired with a withdrawn type can really help. Remember yesterday when you did that thing that you're really worried about? Well, you already did that, so you know you can. And the same goes for ones and twos. The being able to draw on the resource that is that withdrawn type will help center them a little bit more in not just being able to plan for what they're doing, but also remembering where they've been. And having that present focus for the withdrawn type will help give them a little bit of drive. There are things that need to be done right now, and you need to get off your butt and do them because these things have to get done. And having that present focus will help really draw that withdrawn type forward.
I think that's a great intro to the dynamics at play here. Here's the tools of the past. Here's the tools of the present. And there may be a tug of war in terms of the conversation of we should really leverage the past. We should really leverage the here and now, how that materializes. Ones, twos, and sixes are going to earn the things that they want in the world, and that's a very present-oriented posture.
Right.
That's not how 4, 5s, and 9s work, no?
Right. Yeah, the 4s, 5s, and 9s are not at all concerned with earning because they're looking to the past and things that have already happened.
So that energy that comes out of the 1, 2, and 6 is very much here and now. Walk into a room, who can I serve?
Yep.
It's not how 4, 5s, and 9s work.
No. Walk into a room and think about how to get out of it.
Right.
Where's the escape hatch?
Where's the safe space that I can plant myself for a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah.
I bet you there's a place I've been in this room before, and that corner over there worked.
Yep. Yeah. That's a big part of it. Yeah.
1, 2s, and 6 walk in. These are the places that I bet I can bring some value, connect to folks with the thing I have to offer. What would be terrible in these relationships is if the reactive type said to the withdrawn type, this is how it's done, perhaps. You need to be like me.
Right. This is one of the places where these types and all non-same types will struggle here, is expecting that the other type should be more like me.
Yep.
And that's going to be reactive to withdrawn. That's going to be withdrawn to reactive, and especially with the aggressive types, because there's balance to be had, but there's also good in each focus. We need to bring all three into balance, not subjugate one because another is better.
Yeah. Notice how repression works here. I think the struggle between these types probably comes out in the repression a little bit, where the 1, 2, and 6 really want their withdrawn type, the person they're in relationship with, to engage, to get going, to do some stuff.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, the 4, 5, and 9 would be put off or frustrated by the inability of the 1, 2, and 6 to just get their head around the thing that's important.
Right. Or even remember the things that have happened that are important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that work for 2s? 2s do have an anchor in the past because of because they're in the heart triad.
That's more about where their information comes from, not necessarily about where their focus is.
Okay. If you want to know where we're going there, just listen to our last podcast. But
Right.
Where's anything else worth saying here about where this pairing's going to struggle?
Well, I think that what you mentioned is a big one. expecting that the other is going to be more like me and not giving credit to what they bring to the table. We've mentioned this before because you and I share space and work out of the same space. Like one of the very common debates that we have, disagreements that we have in our space is about storage. And I come from hoarders, but also I'm a withdrawn type, and I remember all of the things. Like I have sentimental attachment to things, but also I remember the value of a lot of those things. And so I want to keep things naturally, and that's part of my withdrawnness. That's part of my past focus. It's because I remember what these things were for, and I would like to have them if we ever need them in the future. Because this is also a good example of what past focus is. Keeping these things from my past in case I ever need them in the future. That's part of how I plan for the future.
To speak into that, what's interesting here, one of the reasons I'm so game for throwing things away is I can't remember where I put things.
Yeah.
And so I don't have an anchor in the past to if we created space for storing stuff we haven't used for years, how would I know what was in there? I'd probably just go buy it today because that's just the quickest, easiest system for getting the thing done.
Right. But I keep everything. So I know that we store it somewhere. I may not know exactly where it is, but I know it's here somewhere because we keep everything, right?
I think in part it's where is it and do we even have one? I would have to go looking through countless, square feet of boxes to find.
Yeah, but it's probably there somewhere.
Well,
You just got to go find it.
See, in my mind, you actually have the archival mind going that you would be, oh, no, I put it in this spot at this point in time.
Oh, that's not necessarily true. It's often the case that I remember that it is somewhere, but I don't remember where, so I have to just go find it. And again, this is informed by a long genetic history of hoarding on both sides of my family. So I may not be a great example of this, but
in theory, this might work. In theory, the 4, 5, and 9 can store up stuff.
Yeah.
Because those are tools that they're going to use.
Yeah, exactly. But 1s, 2s, and 6s are much more likely to be, because they are present focused, those things that we used to have, even if we still have them, I'm not sure where they are. We need them right now. Let's just go buy a new one.
That's
how we solve the problem.
It's not just that I don't remember where the tool is. It's that we need it right now. I want it when we need it.
Right.
Because of the present focus.
Right.
And you could see how the tension would emerge.
Right. So this storage issue is actually a really great example, and we will talk about it when we get to the future focus with the third part of our years long debate. But this is a great example of one of the complications about withdrawn and reactive is that withdrawn types hold on to these things from the past, and reactive types don't really have that same kind of anchor. It's about what's happening now and what tools, resources, whatever, what kind of support, what things do we need now without considering what's come before.
Yeah. You'll have to remind me of this quote, but when we talked to Suzanne about her marriage, she's a 2 married to a 9, and she said something to the extent of later isn't a date or later isn't a...
Later is not a point in time. This has become one of my new mantras because it was like a dagger in my heart when I first heard her say that. It's like someone slapping me in the face with this idea.
Notice for the 9 later isn't on the radar because later in theory is a future orientation or for a future term. Right. So really it's not about later. What it is about making things calm at this moment.
And the reason that hits so hard is because all future is later.
And there you
because
go.
Anything that I put off till later is all future things.
Mm-hmm.
But just putting off till later doesn't work because later isn't a point in time.
And it seems like that's the place to shore up your weaknesses with the help of others, or, you have to get stuff done at some points.
Right. So for a withdrawn type, having a reactive type that says, stop living in the past, here are the things that we need to focus on right now is really valuable.
And I suppose as we move to the next one, combination of withdrawns and aggressives, it'll be the same kind of message. It'll be, here are the things that are coming down the road. We need to move and get them started.
Right. Start getting prepared for that. Yeah.
Yep. Bang. One thing I wanted to say about 1s, 6s, and 2s is it seems like they are relying on present tools that they establish over time. You can't build a house in a minute, but you can build a house over time and then rely on its sturdiness when the weather comes.
Yeah.
The 6s seem to be relying on the community that they've built into over time. And so in the moment when things feel shaky, when they need help, that community is what they pull into. And the 1s, and this is why 1s focus so heavily on right and wrong, good and bad, and that sort of systematic thinking, is that's the only tool they have for stability. They build the system over time because in the present moment, they need to push somewhere, and the system is where they're going to push. And so too, 2s. 2s are going to push into the relationships that they've invested in. That was helpful for me. I don't know if there's anything worth saying there, but it's an example of how 1s, 2s, and 6s get you. That's the leverage point they have in getting what they need in the present moment.
Right. Well, I think it's the recognition of that is good in the sense of, because I think these things are sort of crutches. They're substitutes for maturity.
Them fighting words.
And I also don't think that they're you mentioned that they're built over time, but I don't think that I would suggest that a lot of reactive types build into these spaces so that they don't have to utilize them at their full value. Because I think these like the idea of building it over time suggests that they might be like building up a resource from their past to be able to use. But I think they build into these tools so that they don't have to use a past focus. Like, especially thinking about 6s. So using 6s for an example, like the community that they build into. It's still not the community that I've had. It's the community that surrounds me at this moment.
True. No, I think this is why there can be a lot of manic energy around 1s, 2s, and 6s when these things break.
Yeah.
So if the relationship isn't going well for the 2, there's going to be real anxiety because that's where stability is found. And for the 1, I need to get this right. If I don't get this right, then that's the only play I got, you know?
Right.
And it in large measure comes out of that orientation to time. I don't have access to the past and future in the same way that other types do.
Right.
It is the case that I can, we can talk about human growth. Well, we do talk quite a bit about growth in our last podcast on these fronts in terms of well-roundedness. But this is the entry point and the obstacle to overcome. And then 6s obviously, again, need the community around them.
Right. And the use of these tools is, I think, in substitute of the value that the tools represent. So by that, I mean, like, the community, the type of support that the 6 is looking for, they rely too heavily on getting that from outside of themselves because they don't know where that support comes from. The systems that the 1s are relying on is representative of the type of order that exists in the universe and that they can see more clearly than others. And if they were productively thinking, they wouldn't need to rely on the system because they would understand it more intuitively. Twos in relying on the relational connection, the sort of favors and the investments that they've made in other people, that those investments exist because the two has value, because people care about that person. And they're relying on their investments instead of relying on the actual relationships and their own personal value in the lives of these other people.
Yeah, maybe a good way to think on this then is how Riso and Hudson picture this. And we talk about this in our episode labeled Liberation, if you guys want to go to hear more on this. They have 9 levels of health and development.
Right.
In the last level 1, we wanted to call the level of liberation. And each of our types are kind of like ladders that we climb up. And at the highest level, the most healthy level, you get to a spot where you're pushing the ladder away.
Right. Right.
And I think that's what's being described there. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. These
So-
are all tools to get you to a place where once you get there, you don't need these tools anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a lifelong process at times, you know
Right.
what I mean? Or it's an act of sheer grace that you get to experience what it's like to be liberated from all the hang-ups of your type
Right.
and the freedom that comes with that. I suppose lots to be said there. Not only have we done a podcast on that, we did a whole, conference on that, which may or may not get posted someday.
Right.
Well, bang. Next pairing is the most fascinating to me. I'm not anchored in this pairing at all, and it's the aggressive and withdrawn pairing. When we did our deep dive on stance, we called this the yin-yang couple or the tug of war.
Yeah.
Withdrawn energy, past focused. Aggressive energy, future focused. Let's just talk about this type of pairing. So it's what do you see here?
Yeah, it's a good dynamic. It's two types that are sort of opposite each other, that are bringing very different ways of seeing. Like these two types are like, if
This, by the way, is 3, 7s, and 8s are aggressive.
Right.
4s, 5s, and 9s are withdrawn.
Right. And where withdrawn and reactive types are sort of standing next to each other, looking in different directions. It's almost like withdrawn and aggressive types are standing back to back, facing opposite each other. Because withdrawn types are looking to the past to draw tools and resources, and aggressive types are looking to the future and very much focused on where we're going. And not even so much focused on where we're at right now, but their focus is ahead of where we're at. And so these types will often sort of miss each other because of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's often a lot of, not necessarily conflict, but I can't think of a good word.
Seems to be a real communication problem or hurdle.
Because it's not necessarily conflict, but I like the idea of a tug of war, almost like you don't realize that the other person is pulling in a different direction.
Yeah.
Until you like turn to face each other, and it's like, oh, that's why this is going nowhere. Okay,
Right. To put flesh on this again, a recent event in our building was we throw weddings, we throw large weddings. TJ has been there for every single wedding and knows the exact energy in those weddings.
Right.
The aggressive type who throws the weddings,
Right. Our events coordinator.
is envisioning not the places that could go wrong, but the places that he might be out of control and vulnerable if we don't set up the building in a way that accommodates a few hundred people.
Right. Yeah. So he's solving problems that don't yet exist in the future.
Yep.
And I am very cognizant of what things have actually happened in the past. And so I'm preparing for what I remember from my past, while he is focused on solving problems in the future. And we're solving very different problems.
That's why it is.
Yep.
It's the exact same event. You all have a long history of working together. You all are solving fundamentally different problems in your heart and minds. Being able to name that, this is the thing that is really important to me. This is the thing that really is important to me. Having those on the table so that they can be seen, taken in, communicated over, hugely valuable.
Right. And also the opposite of our focus comes into play in a big way there as well, because the thing that I am willing to sort of let go of, because so my sort of blasé attitude about not being able to solve future problems comes in direct conflict with his focus.
Right.
And his total lack of concern for what has happened in the past comes in direct conflict with my focus.
Unpack your focus real quick.
So I'm focused on like this is how these events have gone in the past, and I'm pretty sure that means I know how it's going to go in the future. Mm-hmm. So I'm drawing from that past, and this is how I'm deciding how to move. We don't know how that thing in the future is going to look. I do have resources from my past to help inform how I'm making my decisions, but this thing in the future is going to go how it's going to go, and we can plan for it based on our history. But if things go wrong, they go wrong, and we learn for the next time.
And the primary for him is he doesn't have an anchor in the past,
Right.
but he certainly doesn't want to feel vulnerable.
Right. So
And
those problems that I'm okay letting happen in the future because I'm not focused on the future, he's trying to solve them already.
And wouldn't it also be the case that he wants people around him who are going to be strong, showcase their strength I would assume in a similar way to how he wants to have things done? Certainly in the ability to see the problem at hand.
Yeah.
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 And that's where there's a communication gulf.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I also think that is we're getting a little farther into specifically the 8 future focus, because the person we're talking about is an 8, and he wants people around that are going to do exactly what he says in the way that he says it. Like there's certainly a control element. I don't think that all future focus types are going to be like that, but the way that he solves future problems has to do with the strength, vulnerability, control, that kind of ideals around him. And he wants, I think all future focus aggressive types are going to be a little bit concerned with the sort of efficiency and like getting the job done well. But I think that he as an 8 is focused on particular way of managing that.
This is where actually I hear it across the 3s and 7s in terms of, I feel like that's where the aggressive energy really comes into play. We're going to go do this thing because I want to be on that stage. I want to be on that adventure. I want to be, in control and powerful, I suppose. Like I want to be in a space where, again, I'm not vulnerable. I'm spinning the 8s negative but the other two, the 7s and the 3s feel real clean to me in terms of the withdrawn type. I imagine would feel to the 3 and 7 also kind of like an anchor. Like, man, we got to go. We got to go because here's the thing: if we're not moving, we're not going to get the prize, y'all. Something
but
like that.
I think that the 8s are going to be a little bit more aggressive about it, and even I think that 3s and 7s are going to be a little bit more invitational.
Okay, sure.
About getting withdrawn types on board. Whereas I think 8s are going to be a little more demanding about it.
I feel like 3, 7s, and 8s all can just cut those relationships pretty quickly. If they're the 3 detaches, the 7 just says, is just going too fast for folks to keep up.
Out the door. Yeah.
And the 8 will run somebody over and maybe even smile while they do it.
Right.
I'm listening to a podcast about a real unhealthy 8 who was describing their kind of a badge of honor was the number of bodies that they had left, run over in their pursuit of higher, faster, bigger. I had a thought. We've talked about how the one pairing of healthy people that often may still not work is 9s and 8s. And that may still be true. I think the most difficult relationship across the board is actually here, and it's with 4s and 8s. I think
Sure.
they both value authenticity and maybe not much else.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. In part, and it's not just future past, but that certainly is part of it. But it's also 8s are the most feeling repressed, and 4s are the most feeling.
Yep. Where I see this, I know of only one pairing of this sort, 4s and 8s, who has chosen, like, it's two friends who love each other and do life together. I know of one marriage that didn't work. There was a 4 and an 8. I know about a bunch of parent-child relationships of this sort, and they always are very
Struggle
difficult.
real hard, especially in the teenage years.
And I think I'm using this combination in particular because I think it showcases the energy of the future focus and the past focused, and how it would be so difficult if you don't have language, for communicating this.
Right.
In terms of like the withdrawn types in particular, especially in American culture, being able to say, look, here's the tool I'm using to get what I want. It's a past oriented tool, and that's what I got in my bag. I got nothing else, you know.
And when we talk about our conflicts, I am particularly remembering all of the times that we've been in conflict in the past, and all of the times that I've been in conflict with other people in the past, especially people like you. It's not just about
You being the aggressive type.
Right. It's not just about what's happening between me and you right now. It's about what has happened between us in the past as well.
Right.
And for the aggressive type, not just 8s and 4s, but this is true for all withdrawn types and all aggressive types. When we come into conflict, aggressive types are not focused on how it has gone in the past, whereas the withdrawn types are. Aggressive types are already solving the future of this problem. And oftentimes it's a like, let's get this over with so that we can move on.
Yeah. Lots of energy from the aggressive types and a low amount of energy from withdrawn types, but perhaps that's why is there's so much energy going into the tool. Here's how things have gone badly in the past on these fronts, where 3, 7s, and 8s. Why would we look at the past? We're moving forward.
Right.
Let's go. And there's where the relationship may break down is the feeling repression of 3, 7s, and 8s comes into play here. I don't care about how you feel about the past.
Right.
And for the 4, 5, 9, that's the tool they got. And they're not moving because they're action repressed because of it.
Right. Well, and even particularly thinking about these types in conflict where the aggressive type is perhaps the one in the wrong. The withdrawn type is using examples from the past. Here's the things that you've done in the past. Here's how our relationship has gone, and here's how conflicts have gone in the past, et cetera, et cetera. And the aggressive type, the thing that they did wrong already happened. Why have we not moved on from this yet?
Right. Yep. Because on the aggressive type side, the place they're finding stability with their tool are these future things.
Right.
It's the goal for the 3, or it's, what the ideals or the adventure for the 7. The 8 has, I suppose the 8 has their, you want to talk about this? This might be complicated, but the 8 has their will. The future isn't realized, so it's nothing material. There's no memory of the future yet.
Right.
It's possibility.
But there is the world as I see it.
Yes.
And I have the strength and the will to order the world according to how I think it should be.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. What's being leaned into there is my way. My way is going to work, so let's get on board.
Right.
And the withdrawn type says, we've seen this, we've read this book before.
Right.
It goes great sometimes.
And sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And yeah, the aggressive type is like, no, it's coming. Let's go.
We've talked about this in the past with aggressive types. All 3 of 3, 7s, and 8s will go until they crash. And when they crash, that's when the break ends up being exposing.
Right.
wisdom is found in perhaps some of the language from other types, but especially from withdrawn types. That's a great good for an aggressive type, to have those who are communicating into their lives about the past. Here's where you need to be cautious. Here's where you need to be humble.
Here are the things from your own past that you seem to be forgetting.
Yeah. These are difficult conversation points, but in relationship, that's real healthy relationships. You're going to be able to grow and learn and lean into each other there.
Right.
Organizations in particular on this front, if you have more than 4 or 5 people doing something, having the multiple voices around the King Arthur's round table, as it were,
Right.
and saying what does moving forward look like. Oftentimes the best voices in how do we move forward are going to be those who are very strong at looking at the past. You saw those photographs of people from the Spanish flu era with masks on, yeah?
Right.
For example.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite books of all time is The Giver.
Yeah.
And I think it's in part because I feel like I am the giver. And like his job, the role of the giver in this society is to have the memories of the past. And they're the only person in their entire society that has those memories, and they're passed down from like when that person starts to get old and is heading toward the end of their life, they pass those memories on to someone else. And like you have to have that role of remembering the past. But if all you ever do is remember the past, then you don't go anywhere.
It's true. Image that's coming to my mind is Christmas Carol on this front, but
Yeah.
the value of seeing your life played out in these ways. There's a Christmas Carol scene in Loki recently that I thought was really tastefully done in terms of same story. This is here's your past, present, and future.
Yeah. Here's and in an interesting way of saying here's things that went wrong in not necessarily your past, but a past where you played a part.
Yeah.
And here's things that obviously you didn't live this life, but here's where your life could have gone. This is the future that you could have had.
Bing. Well, we'll jump forward then to the next group, which is we'll get into the reactives. Let's do 2 reactives. You got 2 reactives in relationship. This is 1s, 2s, and 6s. This pairing in particular also has a real interesting energy between it. So you want to talk about this, these pairings?
So 2 reactive types are obviously going to be both present focused. One of the interesting things that comes out of reactive types is that because their energy is reactive and sort of dependent on something outside of them for them to react to, it becomes a little bit of a it's not feedback, it's the opposite of feedback. It's like they don't know, they're sort of waiting for the other one to instigate something for them to react to. So 1s, 2s, and 6s will often be a weird and difficult, like I see these 2 types being really awkward around each other a lot.
Yep.
Because they're sort of looking for something to react to, and they're both doing that to the other.
I'm sure I've talked about this numerous times that with family members, with people I've dated, with friends, if I'm in a car with just one other reactive type, it's very common that we just don't talk at all in the car.
Right. Because they're waiting for the other one to get the thing rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
Right. I don't know.
The one place that this differs, and perhaps the move forward, is what are you both committed to that's outside of yourself that has energy. For romantic partners, sometimes that could be we're doing this job together, or we're going on these vacations together. You have something that has energy there, or we have this child together, and the child brings something up.
Right.
We talked about the 2 gangsters in Pulp Fiction being reactive types, and they have a job to do. They're reactive types, but the job is what propels their energy.
Right. And all of their conversations and stuff are about have very little to do with the job.
Yep.
They're just sort of talking.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good window into what present focus looks like here, because they're doing something together. And so present focus types, it's often the case that their relationship will be built around what they are doing together at the present moment.
Yep.
And so if they're not doing something together, working on something, then there's not much to be had necessarily.
Yep. I've noted this. TJ could probably speak more informed than I can to this element in myself, but nearly every depthy relationship I have is based around us doing something together. Right. I have almost no relationships with people who I don't go and accomplish something with.
Right.
And that could be from something athletic, we are runners, or something philosophical or idealistic, or we're both in ministry or nonprofit work, or or we're doing podcasts, we're doing something.
Right.
I mean, even my wife and I are very much doing things together as well as being lovers.
Right.
And that's a lot of the energy from our relationship comes out of the conversations about what are you accomplishing? What's the next thing? How are we going to tackle that next hill?
Right. And even there, a lot of the future focus comes from her, not from you.
Yep.
If she wasn't drawing your eye to the next hill, you may not have focus on the next hill. You may still be focused at the bottom of that hill.
Of all things, for us, our future focus actually comes in spurts from me, and it comes when I'm in security. It's when everything's checkmarked and I'm feeling strong, capable. I got money in my bank account, and now it's time to do something big and new with energy. And then I get to work on the daily project. And she says, have you thought about these 12 things coming up this week?
Sure.
Which I have not.
Right. Yeah.
Energy for the reactives often comes around. You both walk into a room and both of you are thinking, who do I serve?
Right. What needs to be done right now?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's just worth naming. It might be, it might often, I mean, I can imagine it being the case especially for romantic couples, that it can be very difficult to find the connecting points.
Right.
Because you're waiting for the other person to move first. Unless we've talked about this in the past, like a long time ago, that creating systems at that point for it's your turn to decide, or it's your turn to go first, or figuring out something. I was watching the Queen's Gambit the other day, and there's a scene in which two people are playing chess, and one of them grabs two chess pieces, one's black, one's white, shuffles them behind his back, and then holds out his hands. Mm-hmm. It's like you have to pick one, and the white comes up, and that means that you go first.
Right.
Because that's how reactive types might look, is it's just you have your pieces set up, they're lined up, they're ready to go, but somebody needs to move first.
Right. And oftentimes that decision needs to come from the outside.
Yeah.
Well, and this is, I think you're going to see this with withdrawn and reactive, that there isn't necessarily a lot of excitement. Like there's no dynamism when these pairs are together. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something to be aware of. It is certainly something to name. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a little bit more awkwardness involved in reactive, unless there's something to do. I think withdrawn types are going to be very comfortable not really doing anything because, they're action repressed. But without an outside force, they'll stay in that comfort forever. Mm-hmm. There's no excitement to be had in that relationship without some kind of outside force. And that's fine. It's just something to know, something to be aware of.
But with reactive, it ends up being. Didn't you land on?
And because they're focused on what's happening in the present moment. That means that they're sort of at the whim of what's directly in front of them.
Oh, there you go. True. Yeah, there's a couple of people that work at our building who are reactive types, and I never have conversations with them unless it's the case that something's broken, and then we're great. There's like energy all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And that's infused, and I'm like, oh, this person's really enjoyable, and It's kind of that thing.
Because the interaction without something to focus on at this moment requires a past focus.
On the flip side, my conversations with most of the people that work at our building who are mostly withdrawn end up being about things like 60s music.
Yeah.
It's I'm reacting to the withdrawn person and they're just what are you focusing on?
Right.
Funny. Okay. Next one is reactive aggressive. These pairings generally get some stuff done. This is, you would think that it's aggressive that are going to be the pairing that gets the most done. They may get stuff done in spurts, but I think over the long haul, one reactive, one aggressive is these folks are going to build some stuff.
Yeah. It's like I don't know how it works out and anywhere else because our town is tremendously and famously inefficient at plowing our streets. But one of the things that they do is they have the one truck that's on the side of the road and the second truck that's directly behind the first truck.
Sure. Yeah.
That's sort of picking up the first truck's leftovers.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that.
Yep.
The aggressive type is moving forward and the reactive type is like sort of following behind them.
Yep.
Picking up the whatever fell off the plate of the aggressive as they were running.
I like that as an image. I was talking to a women's group the other day and said to one set, you've heard that, ladies are supposed to follow the lead of the males in their life. The entire room was filled with aggressive type women. And I was like, you will realize this is terrible advice for your marriage because it's never going to happen because you are the one that's leading and your reactive husband. It was all these women who are aggressive who had reactive husbands. You will realize that they are waiting to see where your energy is going to go. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's your wiring.
Right.
Made me laugh. And that's the relationship I'm in.
Yeah.
I like that dynamic. Both sets are going to have the tools that they bring. Here's what we're going to do in the future. And then the reactive type is going to be, okay, since that's what's going on in the future, this is what we're doing today.
Right.
And even reacting to the future energy in the present moment. Well,
and one of the ways that we sort of we describe a lot of aggressive types, particularly eights, is about this is what we're doing right now to get to this future that we're focused on. And that I think is the perfect way to describe the dynamic between an aggressive type and a reactive type, is that the aggressive type is driving toward this future that they're envisioning, and the reactive type is saying, here's what we need to do right now to get to that place that you're describing.
Yeah. That feels like ones. Is that true of sixes? Would sixes have that posture toward the aggressive types?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sixes are going to be bigger on the planning side. Okay, but what about this? And what about this thing?
There
and what about this thing? We need to get this, and we need to get this.
As the second truck in line, it's very much the what about
picking
this?
Up the slack, yeah.
Yeah, it's the have you considered as we're just plowing forward.
Mm-hmm.
As we're just plowing forward.
Yep.
Well, how does that work for twos? Twos are following the lead of an aggressive type in their life.
Oftentimes what will happen there is the two is going to be taking care of the emotional needs.
Of course. Yeah.
Not only of the aggressive type themselves.
Yep.
I shouldn't say emotional. I should say relational needs.
Yep.
Because a lot of aggressive types are not going to be very good at, like, they're going to let someone else take care of things that they don't want to do. And the two will come alongside them as a helper and take care of those things. And that will be both for the aggressive type's individual person, but also the damage that they cause in their wake.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting is that's flipped in my relationship with my wife. I'm the less emotionally intelligent one, and I'm pushing for more idealistic visions of what we should be doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas she the three is I don't know how this would work for her in feeling repression. A feeling repression there isn't about other people's emotions. It's about her emotions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a different type of feeling repression.
Right.
I mean, threes can still stomp on people as they're pursuing the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's reflective of a more unhealthy three, which there obviously are a lot of very unhealthy threes in the world. And your dynamic aside, it'll often be the case that the reactive type in the super unhealthy three's life is taking care of the damage that the three has done.
Yeah.
In their pursuit of success.
Bang. I feel like I'm way more aware of that with the sevens and eights in my life than I am with the threes. But I'll have to think on that. But where's the tension going to be between those with a future orientation and those with a present orientation?
Well, it'll be similar to the past focus, just with more energy around it. The future focus types are going to be concerned about what's coming, and the present focus types are going to be concerned about what we need to do right now. And the future focus is going to, why do you not already have a plan? And the present focus is going to be like, hang on a sec. We have to solve this part first before we get to wherever it is you're heading. Like, that's going to be one of the main dynamic problems, is that the aggressive types are moving ahead and moving past the things that need to be done right now.
Yeah. That becomes, as you say it, that's exactly the dynamic. Nearly everything I do with aggressive types in my life is about me building a foundation that they are just oblivious to. Mm-hmm. If we're going to build this house, you have to spend a lot of time on this foundation, or you're not going to get this structure up. Whereas they're already figuring out how to pay for the roof.
Right.
Kind of,
Yeah, buying curtains.
Yeah.
It's like we have to build the foundation first. Don't worry about curtains; those are coming.
Entirely right.
And on the other side of that, the aggressive types are ready to move on already. Mm-hmm. Why are we still talking about the foundation? There's much more interesting things ahead of us. The
withdrawn, aggressive parent relationship it's going to have an energy to it, and I suppose because I don't have a foot in it, that feels to me like a tricky energy. Mm-hmm. The reactive aggressive energy, I feel like can be one of those places that's very comfortable in a parent-child relationship. There's the complementariness. I have a handful that are just kind of popping in my head. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter who's who. I'm a reactive and I have an aggressive child, and I know what the energy is there. But I could see it being the opposite if I was an aggressive parent with a reactive child. It's like, here's where we're going.
With the aggressive child, I could easily see the aggressive child becoming the one in the driver's seat.
Sure. And the thing that ends up happening as a reactive type is I'm thrilled that you're in the driver's seat. It gives me something to perfect. It gives, as in terms of my type, it gives me something to fashion and steer.
Yeah. But you could also see, we can all think of examples of people, of adults who let their children call all the shots.
True. Okay. Yeah. Talk about that.
And I feel like you could easily see that in this dynamic and particularly twos with aggressive types, because twos are the most likely to be codependent, just sort of letting the aggressive type call all the shots for them and just saying, like, this is where the codependence comes from. If I do what they want, then they'll love me. The reactive parent not being able to draw appropriate boundaries around the aggressive child could very potentially become a problem. And even worse so for a withdrawn parent letting their aggressive child just do whatever they want and not being engaged at all.
That's a great opposite side of the coin there.
Mm-hmm. But again, that plays into a lot of, like, this has a lot to do with health.
Yeah, and to build on that, health also can include self-understanding and perhaps even duty or your role in this person's life.
Right.
They don't get another mom. You have to fill that space with your two-ness, with your six-ness, with your oneness.
Right.
And as the parent who is raising them up in maturity. And if they take the wheel and you cannot help cultivate maturity, then that's going to be what I'm trying to.
It's going to be a
avoid the
problem.
It's going to be a problem.
You're going to have a bad time, and people aren't going to like your kid.
And you may have a very difficult time with your child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's all around. And good news, I think aggressive type children actually do want somebody to be in control or to oversee their energy, to create the sandbox. They may want to make the sandcastle, but somebody needs to be overseeing the sandbox so that they feel safe,
Right.
No matter how much energy is pouring off of them.
Right.
And even directed. Like here's some good uses of your enormous amounts of energy.
Mm-hmm. Honing it and giving it space to be what it needs to be in appropriate settings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aggressive people run amok, create all kinds of problems. Aggressive people that know how to direct their energy move mountains and create organizations that change people's lives and do all kinds of really great things.
Yeah.
Aggressive people who don't know how to control their energy run over people. And it's terrible.
This metaphor is going to get lost on most, but Latner and Krzyzewski are a combination. It's a Duke basketball player and coach, and the coach is very much, I would guess, is a 1, and the player is a 8. And the coach used a metaphor of this player after he graduated as the best college basketball player arguably ever, at least most accomplished, and he went into the pros and just struggled. And the coach said to the pro coach who had drafted him, hey, Latner is a fire, and if you hone the fire, it can heat your whole building, and if you don't hone the fire, it's going to burn the whole thing down, and that's who you drafted.
Yeah.
And that's the kid you got handed on day one, it's over.
Right.
On the flip side, aggressive parents, I imagine, can have great relationships with reactive kids who are getting pulled into their energy.
Right.
But
We have these places to go. And
what's the negative there? Like aggressive parent, reactive child.
I think aggressive parents who are unhealthy, it's always the case that they become dictators,
This is what
or
we're gonna do.
they push past their family in such a way that their family gets left out in the cold.
Sure. Yeah.
But with reactive types, I think overly aggressive parents with reactive children, you're more likely to push them, either push them into becoming sort of a copy of your aggression, but unnaturally so, or stifling them to the point where whatever's the good things about them can't come out.
True. Oh, you need to be
So
successful
it's
like me. You need to be adventurous like me. You need to be powerful like me.
Right.
Kind of parenting.
And with reactive types, because they're reacting to that energy, they're either going to match it, which is unhealthy because that's not who they are.
Yep.
Or they're going to retreat from it, which is still not who they are. It's an unhealthy retreat.
Yeah. Yeah. Both 6s and 2s, assuming that stress, are going to get aggressive. Ones might retreat.
Or like compliant to the point of disappearing.
Sure. Yeah. I can see that. Okay. Yeah. Bang. Last word on this pairing?
There's a lot of energy here. It can be used for good or evil.
Speaking of energy, what's the word on 2 aggressive, future-oriented people in relationships?
So, being that this is the last one, we already talked a lot about aggressive types. And since we've talked about the dynamic of the other 2 joint pairs, I think that a lot of what we have to say is going to be fairly obvious. But like when 2 people who are only focused on the future are together, they're only focused on the future.
That's 3 7s and 8s, by the way.
Right. They're going to be looking toward. They're not going to be thinking about what's happening right now. They're not going to have any kind of anchor in the past. They're going to have grand ideas and visions about where we could be going. And if your vision is different from my vision, we're going to go in opposite directions. But we're still going to be moving, and it's forward for how I think it should be.
Lots of what's happening next Tuesday conversation going on here, yeah?
Yep, absolutely. These are types that will not want to have a meeting because this meeting could have been an email, and that email could have been a calendar attachment. Because all we need to know is what's coming next Tuesday. We don't need to talk about it.
There you go. I think we called this pairing the energizers or something like that when we had them. And there is going to be tons of forward movement if the two have the same values and have the vocabulary and ability to work through common ends.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, there might be a lot of aggressive energy coming out in conflict.
Mm-hmm. And misunderstanding because these three types don't understand the impact they have on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't understand how to communicate their own feelings well.
Mm-hmm.
So not only do they not know, so person A, who is in the aggressive stance, doesn't know how to tell person B, who is also in the aggressive stance, B, you hurt my feelings. And person B, if they do hear that, doesn't understand what it means.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't know how to talk about their feelings, and they don't know how to talk about their history. Like this is one of the big things about aggressive types being together is they don't know how to communicate about their history and place value in their history together. They're not only their separate histories who brought them to where they are, but also their combined history of this is how from the day we met to now, this is how we've gotten here. They're both focused on what's coming in the future.
Yeah.
So it's very easy for them to sort of misstep in ways that both sides don't know how to communicate about.
Conversation there may look very demanding and assertive on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Which on good days is great for both of them because why are we talking about all these pesky feelings? Let's just move forward. But on bad days is really bad for both of them.
Yeah. So I'm in a house with two aggressive types, and there's a handful of different combinations between the four of us. But when the two aggressive types in my house get in an argument, it's very clear that the other two of us go hide in the basement because
of course. Yeah.
The eruption of energy is very different from any of the other combinations.
Right. In particular, because they're both solving future problems, but they are not at all solving the same future problems.
And that's where, the communication. Yeah, talk about that.
So, in this example of a 3 and an 8, their future problems that they are solving comes with not only the wisdom and the lifetime experience of the 3 parenting the 8, who is a teenager and doesn't know what they're talking about. But also the 3 is focused on appearance and what other people think and attention and affection and relationships. And the 8 is not at all interested in those things. The 8 is focused on power and control and autonomy and physical comfort in a different kind of way that the 3 is not interested in. Mm-hmm. The problems that they are solving are fundamentally different.
Yep.
And they're both in the future, so it seems like there's a little bit of similarity, but they're not talking about the same thing.
Oh, there you go. I mean, actually, because it's both in the future, it's both of them are ethereal. There's no tangibility to the future.
Right.
There's
so, for
what
example,
might happen.
When we're talking about college,
Yeah.
We're talking about college, but we're not even a little bit talking about the same thing about college.
Yeah. Whatever assumptions or visions you may have about what that may look like.
Right.
Both of which are probably wrong.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to throw a 7 in the mix here, it'd be similar in kind in terms of appearance versus adventure versus control.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, again, I want to circle back on the good side of this relationship is if you get on the same page and you have the same values. So the aggressive man who works in our building works wonderfully with my wife, who is also aggressive, 8 and a 3, but they have very similar visions about what we're doing with our space. And
they easily figure out how to complement each other to solve each other's future problems.
Yes. Yeah. And they're on that wavelength, same wavelength. And so lots of communication.
And neither of them have to deal, their pairing does not have to deal with the minutia of the day-to-day kind of stuff. All they have to do together is focus on solving future problems.
Yeah. Which, if it was just them, all sorts of things would break.
Yep.
On that front.
Right.
Because the day-to-day in particular, the day-to-day minutia, it would not be, I imagine, their strong points.
Right. Well, and in particular, considering the viewpoints of other people.
Well,
for example, we are in the midst of a discussion about our chairs, right? And so we're talking as a team. We're talking about whether or not we want to keep the chairs that we currently have in our building or replace them with something different that might be easier to move, easier to store, whatever. One thing that the 3 and the 8 are not even a little bit interested in until someone else says it is the physical comfort of those chairs, because they do not give a crap about the physical comfort of those chairs. That does not at all play into how they consider this tool for the success of their events. But the 9 with the physical pain disease is like, hang on a second. Do these chairs have cushions? What about grandma? What about me? What about people who are going to be sitting in these chairs for an hour at a time and are concerned about their physical comfort?
Yeah.
This is something that does not cross the mind of the 3 and the 8.
Right.
And it's not because they don't care, it's because they're not concerned about that at all.
This again I suppose I'm highlighting different kinds of relationships, but I can imagine lots of 3s, 7s, and 8s rising to leadership in organizations, especially given the culture that we're in.
Absolutely.
And being the ones who are saying, here's where we're driving the bus forward. And that's the exact sort of conversation that they may need to pause on. Oh, wait, the aggressive types in the room have all decided that this is the best way to go. But then other voices are coming in after the fact and saying, have you considered the past?
Have you considered X? Have you considered X? Have you considered X? And this is one of the places where the voice of the 6 is really, 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 really important. 6s, you need to speak up because your voice is really important. Is have you considered this? Have you considered this? Have you considered this? And then drawing in voices from the past as well of this is what has happened when these things have been done in the past. That's also really important because a lot of 3s, 7s, and 8s, they didn't store that information because the past is unimportant to them.
Right. And lots of stuff there. I mean, the 1 is saying, is this moral and good? And the 2 is saying, have you considered other people's feelings here?
Right.
Yeah, everybody has something to contribute at that level, I suppose.
Yeah.
And that's, again, as it should be. Our types, the more people that are in the room, the more that our Enneagram type ought to shine out a little bit more and can bring quite a bit of color and value to the space that we really have skill.
Right.
And healthy people learn how to really leverage the abilities of others in the room. Especially healthy leaders have the ability to not only honor the loudest person, but really find the skills that the quietest person also brings.
Right. Well, and we've spent a lot of this time talking about the sort of the presentation, the personality dynamics of aggressive types, reactive types, withdrawn types, whereas the focus for us is about orientation to time, and orientation to time informs those personality dynamics. And like we keep saying, maturity is about holding the past, present, and the future at the same time. And when aggressive types, when people who are always looking to the future are only looking to the future, they miss out on a lot of stuff that's happening right now and a lot of stuff that came before. Like that's what happens. That's why they're able to sort of steamroll people, is because they're looking toward a future and not concerned about what's happening around them. So they need, like, it's good to have the voices of people who are oriented in a different direction around us to remind us of the pieces that we're missing.
Mm-hmm. Bang. Well, that's what I got, man.
Cool.
Probably be worth picking up the other side of this coin, which is our intelligence center and the future, past, present focus of our intelligence center in relationship. It may probably be different, but if you understand that person struggles with fear and you struggle with anger, those are very different starting points.
Right.
And being able to think through that, because two people who are fearful or two people who are angry, that's going to create a dynamic, and it's good to name that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe someday.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a part 2 of this sucker. But in the meantime, so fun fact before we sign off, we have a new website that catalogs what happens on our website, or on our podcast, like how much people listen to. And this is the point where you're going to actually turn this off, because I can see the stats. So for 2 seconds before you turn this off, go give us some stars or share this with somebody that you love, specifically somebody who has a different stance than you, actually, or has the same stance. We covered that. Okay, now you can tune out. You can find all the links to all of our stuff at aroundthecircle.org. And if you want to communicate with us, we're on Instagram and Twitter. You got anything else, TJ?
I got nothing, man.
He is TJ Wilson. He's officially awesome. And I'm Jeff Cook. And who you aren't isn't interesting. Be who you are.
Morning will come burning